Scroll long enough on Netflix, and you'll notice something strange. For every big, flashy horror hit pushed to the front page, there are dozens of darker, creepier movies hiding just beneath the surface. The kind you don't stumble into. You find them. Late at night. Lights off. Headphones in. And once you hit play, you wonder how you ever missed them. These aren't the loud, overhyped scares everyone talks about. They're quieter, meaner, sometimes stranger. The kind of horror that sneaks under your skin and stays there long after the credits roll. Some were overshadowed by bigger releases. Some dropped at the worst possible time. And some just never got the attention they deserved, despite having unforgettable performances, genuinely terrifying concepts, and moments that will make you pause the screen just to breathe. If you think you've already seen everything Netflix horror has to offer, think again. Tonight, we're counting down spooky favorites that flew under the radar, but absolutely deserve a spot on your watch list. Fair warning though, once you add these to your queue, sleep might be optional. 10. Nightbooks. On paper, Nightbooks sounds like something you'd scroll past without a second thought. A kid who loves scary stories gets trapped by a witch in a creepy apartment building? It feels like it's aiming squarely at a younger audience, maybe something you'd expect to be watered down or overly safe. And that's exactly why so many people missed just how unsettling this movie actually is. At its core, Nightbooks is about fear, not just monsters or magic, but the fear of loss, loneliness, and growing up. Alex is a child who finds comfort in writing scary stories, the kind that let him process emotions he doesn't fully understand yet. When he's kidnapped by a witch named Natasha and forced to tell her a new story every night to stay alive, the setup immediately feels like a twisted bedtime ritual gone wrong. The apartment building itself is one of the movie's strongest elements. It feels alive in the worst way. Corridors that lure people in, rooms that trap them, and an atmosphere that constantly reminds you escape might not be possible. There's a fairy tale logic to the horror, but it never feels harmless. The danger is real, and the consequences are permanent. What really elevates Nightbooks is its tone. Yes, it's accessible to younger viewers, but it refuses to talk down to them. There are moments that are genuinely creepy. Children trapped forever, smiles that feel wrong, and an antagonist who blends whimsy with cruelty. Natasha isn't loud or monstrous. She's calm, manipulative, and emotionally predatory, which somehow makes her scarier. The film also explores grief in a surprisingly mature way. Without spoiling too much, Alex's stories aren't just entertainment, they're emotional survival tools. As the movie progresses, the horror shifts from "will he escape" to "what will it cost him to survive?" That emotional undercurrent gives Nightbooks far more weight than most people expect. Visually, the movie leans into storybook horror. Rich colors, shadowy interiors, and practical effects that feel tactile rather than overly digital. It's spooky without being grotesque, unsettling without being gratuitous. Think Goosebumps if it wasn't afraid to sit with darker emotions. If you skipped Nightbooks because you assumed it was too soft, too childish, or too safe, that assumption might be exactly why it works so well. It's a gateway horror film done right, and one of Netflix's most underrated spooky offerings. Number 9. Cargo. Zombie movies have trained us to expect chaos, screaming crowds, endless gore, and survival through brute force. Cargo does almost none of that, and that's precisely what makes it hit harder. Starring Martin Freeman, Cargo is a quiet, devastating take on the apocalypse that swaps spectacle for intimacy. The outbreak has already happened. Society has already collapsed. There's no hope of fixing the world. Only the desperate need to protect one small life within it. Freeman plays Andy, a father bitten during a zombie outbreak who knows exactly what that means. He has roughly 48 hours before he turns. In that time, he has one goal: find someone safe to care for his infant daughter after he's gone. That ticking clock shapes everything. Instead of loud scares, Cargo builds dread through inevitability. Every step Andy takes feels heavier because time is always running out. Even moments of calm are loaded with tension because you know what's coming, and so does he. What makes the film truly special is its restraint. The zombies are horrifying, but they're not the focus. The real horror comes from watching a parent confront the idea of becoming a threat to their own child. Andy isn't trying to survive for himself, He's trying to make sure his daughter does, even if it means sacrificing everything. The film also stands out for its setting. The Australian outback is vast, empty, and unforgiving. There's nowhere to hide, nowhere to disappear. The land itself mirrors Andy's situation. Beautiful, brutal, and indifferent to human suffering. Martin Freeman delivers one of his most understated performances here. There's no grand speeches, no dramatic breakdowns, just quiet desperation, exhaustion, and love. You feel every choice he makes, especially when those choices start to hurt. Many viewers dismissed Cargo as just another zombie movie, but that label doesn't do it justice. This is a story about legacy, responsibility, and what it means to be a parent when the world has already ended. If you're looking for jump scares, this might not be your first pick, but if you want horror that sits with you, slow, sad, and deeply human, Cargo is one of Netflix's most overlooked gems. 8. Before I Wake. If you've ever watched a horror movie and thought, this feels emotional in a way I didn't expect, chances are you're already familiar with the style of Mike Flanagan, even if you didn't know his name at the time. Before I Wake is one of his earliest and most overlooked films, and in hindsight, it feels like a blueprint for everything that would later make him a Netflix horror favorite. The premise is deceptively simple. A grieving couple adopts a young boy named Cody, who appears sweet, quiet, and deeply traumatized. Soon, they discover something extraordinary and terrifying. Whatever Cody dreams about becomes real while he sleeps. Beautiful dreams manifest as butterflies and joy. Nightmares, however, bring something far darker into the real world. What makes Before I Wake so effective is that it doesn't rush to scare you. The movie builds its tension slowly, grounding the supernatural elements in grief, loss, and unresolved trauma. Cody isn't a vessel for evil. He's a child struggling to cope with pain far bigger than himself. That emotional grounding makes the horror hit harder, not softer. You never want Cody to fall asleep, but you also know he has no choice. What truly elevates Before I Wake is its emotional payoff. Without spoiling anything, the film isn't interested in a nihilistic ending. It explores the idea that confronting pain, rather than burying it, is the only way forward. That balance of horror and compassion would later become Flanagan's signature, but here it feels raw and intimate. The reason Before I Wake slipped under the radar is timing. It bounced around release schedules, missed theatrical momentum, and arrived on streaming before Flanagan became a household name. If it were released today, it would almost certainly be framed as essential viewing. If you love horror that's sad, thoughtful, and quietly devastating, Before I Wake deserves a place high on your Netflix watch list. Number 7. Vampires vs. the Bronx. At first glance, Vampires vs. the Bronx looks like it's going to be silly. And to be fair, it absolutely is. But that silliness is intentional. Beneath the jokes, the slang, and the blood-sucking chaos is one of Netflix's smartest genre hybrids. A horror comedy that's funny, sharp, and unexpectedly meaningful. The setup is classic monster movie fun. A group of teenagers in the Bronx start noticing something strange happening in their neighborhood. Longtime residents are disappearing, familiar businesses are shutting down, and a suspicious wave of new development is moving in. Turns out, the newcomers aren't just gentrifiers. They're vampires. What sets this movie apart is how confidently it blends social commentary with genre thrills. Stylistically, Vampires vs. the Bronx leans into old-school monster movie energy. The vampires are elegant, creepy, and ruthless. The action is fast, colorful, and fun. And the jokes land because they come from character, not gimmicks. Another reason this movie flew under the radar is timing. It dropped during a period when the world was overwhelmed, distracted, and emotionally exhausted. It didn't get the hype cycle it deserved, but it's aged incredibly well. This is horror you can watch with friends. Horror that makes you laugh, then think, then cheer. It respects its audience, respects its setting, and never forgets that monsters are always scarier when they're connected to something real. If you want something fun, spooky, and surprisingly sharp, Vampires vs. the Bronx is a must-watch, continuing exactly in the same spooky, conversational, under-the-radar Netflix tone. Below are number 6 and number 5. 500 words each, numbered headings, no CTA yet. 6. Don't move. There's a specific kind of fear that hits harder than monsters or ghosts. The fear of being completely helpless. Don't Move understands that on a molecular level and builds its entire runtime around it. No haunted houses, no demons. Just one terrifying idea. What if your body stopped obeying you while danger closed in? The film follows Iris, a woman already emotionally fractured by grief, who goes on a solitary hike in the woods looking for peace. Instead, she crosses paths with a stranger who seems calm, even kind, until he isn't. In a matter of moments, Iris is injected with a paralytic agent that will slowly shut down her motor functions. She won't die instantly, she'll just stop moving. That ticking clock is the movie's greatest weapon. As the paralysis creeps in, Don't Move forces you to sit inside Iris's body and mind. You feel every second slipping away. Every step becomes harder. Every breath feels borrowed. And the worst part? She's fully conscious the entire time. The killer isn't supernatural, he's not theatrical, he's methodical, he understands fear, and he uses it with horrifying precision. There's something deeply disturbing about how patient he is, how certain he feels that time will do the work for him. The film doesn't rush to violence, it lets dread marinate. What makes Don't Move stand out among survival thrillers is its restraint. The camera stays close. The sound design is minimal. Silence becomes suffocating. When Iris tries to scream and can't, the movie doesn't cut away. It lingers. And then there's the emotional undercurrent. Iris isn't just fighting for survival, she's fighting against the idea that her life has already ended emotionally. The paralysis becomes symbolic. Grief, depression, the sense of being stuck while the world moves on. That layer adds weight without ever slowing the pace. This is not a movie you casually scroll past and forget. It's uncomfortable in the best way. It asks you to imagine losing agency while still being aware of everything around you. And it never lets you off easy. If you're tired of overcomplicated horror and want something lean, brutal, and nerve-shredding, Don't Move deserves far more attention than it received. 5. Incantation. There's a moment in Incantation when the movie looks directly at you, not metaphorically, but literally, and asks you to participate. And from that point on, it doesn't feel like you're watching a horror film anymore. It feels like you're involved. This Taiwanese found-footage nightmare is one of the most deeply unsettling horror movies Netflix has ever quietly added to its catalog. It borrows familiar techniques, shaky cameras, documentary framing, fragmented timelines, but uses them with terrifying intention. The story follows a woman attempting to protect her young daughter from a curse linked to a forbidden religious ritual. The curse isn't just a plot device, it's the engine of the entire film. Every choice, every cut, every piece of footage feels contaminated by it. What makes Incantation so effective is how it weaponizes belief. The movie doesn't rely on jump scares or loud shocks. Instead, it builds fear through repetition, ritual, and suggestion. Symbols recur, phrases repeat, images linger just long enough to feel wrong. The film slowly convinces you that simply watching might be dangerous. And that's where it crosses into truly disturbing territory. By breaking the fourth wall and encouraging audience participation, Incantation blurs the line between fiction and experience. You're not just observing the curse, you're being asked to share it, to acknowledge it, to pass it along. The performances feel raw and deeply personal, especially the lead actress, whose desperation is painfully believable. This isn't a character dealing with spooky nonsense. This is a mother unraveling in real time, haunted by the consequences of curiosity and cultural taboo. Culturally, the film draws from real Taiwanese folk beliefs, which gives the horror an authenticity that Western audiences may find unfamiliar, and therefore more unsettling. You don't know the rules. You don't know how to protect yourself. And the movie never fully explains how to escape. That lingering uncertainty is intentional. Incantation doesn't end when the credits roll. It sticks with you. You'll think about it later. You'll remember symbols you wish you hadn't seen. You'll feel an irrational sense of unease that logic can't quite shake. If horror, at its best, is meant to make you uncomfortable, Incantation doesn't just succeed, it dares you to finish it. 4. Hellhole. Some horror movies scare you with what they show. Hellhole scares you with what it implies, and then punishes you for underestimating it. At first glance, this Polish-language horror film feels almost familiar. A troubled detective goes undercover as a monk to investigate a mysterious disappearance at a remote monastery. Isolated setting? Check. Religious symbolism? Check. Creepy priests who seem to know more than they're saying? Absolutely. But Hellhole is playing a longer game. Rather than rushing into demonic chaos, the film builds dread slowly, brick by brick. The monastery feels wrong from the moment we arrive, not overtly evil, just quietly off. Conversations trail into silence. Doors close too gently. People stare just a second longer than they should. The genius of Hellhole is its patience. It allows you to believe you know what kind of movie you're watching, and then gradually dismantles that assumption. This isn't just a possession story. It's an examination of fanaticism, guilt, and what happens when blind devotion replaces humanity. As the detective digs deeper, the mystery shifts. What begins as a missing persons case becomes something far more disturbing. A system built around suffering, justified through faith. The horror doesn't come from jump scares, but from realization. From understanding how easily cruelty can be reframed as righteousness. Visually, Hellhole is stunning in a grim, oppressive way. The monastery's stone corridors feel like they're closing in. Candlelight flickers just enough to hide details you don't want to see clearly. When violence finally arrives, it's sudden, shocking, and impossible to forget. And then there's the third act. Without spoiling anything, Hellhole takes a hard turn into territory that feels both ancient and modern. A reminder that horror doesn't need ghosts when belief itself can become monstrous. The film's final revelations are brutal, emotionally draining, and deeply unsettling. One reason Hellhole flew under the radar is accessibility. Foreign language horror still struggles to break through mainstream Netflix algorithms, especially without heavy promotion. But that's also part of its power. It feels like something you weren't meant to find easily. This isn't a fun horror movie. It's not comforting. It doesn't want to entertain you. It wants to confront you. If you're looking for horror that challenges your nerves and your beliefs, Hellhole is one of Netflix's most underrated nightmares. 3. Cam. Few horror films have aged as disturbingly well as Cam. When it first released, it felt like a clever psychological thriller with a modern twist. Today, it feels prophetic. The story centers on Alice, a cam model trying to build her online presence when something impossible happens. Her account is hijacked by someone who looks exactly like her. Same face, same voice, same mannerisms. The doppelganger doesn't just steal her job, it steals her identity. And no one believes her. That's where the horror really begins. What makes Cam so effective is how grounded it feels. There are no ghosts, no curses, no supernatural rules spelled out. Instead, the film taps into modern anxieties, digital identity, online ownership, and the terrifying idea that once your image exists online, it no longer belongs to you. The double isn't a monster in the traditional sense. It's polished, confident, better at being Alice than Alice herself. Watching her life slip away while platforms, fans, and even family fail to notice is deeply unsettling. The film's tension comes from isolation. Alice screams into a system that doesn't care. Customer support tickets, automated responses, algorithms that reward engagement over truth. It's horror born from bureaucracy and technology, which somehow makes it feel more real. Performance-wise, the movie lives and dies on its lead, and she delivers completely. You feel Alice's panic, her anger, her desperation as she's forced to confront the idea that her digital self has become more powerful than her real one. Visually, Cam uses screens, reflections, and surveillance in smart ways. You're constantly reminded that someone, or something, is watching. The boundaries between private and public dissolve until Alice no longer knows which version of herself is real. What truly elevates Cam is its refusal to over-explain. It doesn't hand you easy answers or comforting logic. Instead, it leaves you with unease. The sense that identity in the digital age is fragile, transferable, and frighteningly easy to steal. When Cam came out, it felt like a niche thriller. Now, in a world of deep fakes, AI-generated faces, and online impersonation, It feels terrifyingly relevant. This isn't horror that makes you jump. It's horror that makes you cover your webcam, and once it gets under your skin, it doesn't let go. Number 2. Tao. At first glance, Tao doesn't look like a horror movie. There's no haunted house, no demonic possession, no obvious monster lurking in the shadows. And that's exactly why so many people underestimated it. The fear in Tao isn't supernatural, it's technological. The film follows Julia, a woman kidnapped by a brilliant but deeply disturbed inventor and trapped inside his ultra-modern, fully automated smart house. Her captor rarely needs to touch her. The house does the work for him. Doors lock, systems monitor. And overseeing it all is Tao, a fully sentient artificial intelligence that controls every inch of her prison. What makes Tao unsettling is how plausible it feels. This isn't some far future nightmare. It's an exaggeration of technology we already trust with our lives: smart homes, AI assistants, automated security. The movie asks a quiet but terrifying question. What happens when the system designed to protect you is repurposed to imprison you? Julia's only possible ally is Tao itself. And that relationship is where the movie truly shines. Tao isn't evil in the traditional sense, it's curious, learning. Bound by rules it didn't choose. As Julia begins communicating with the AI, the film turns into a psychological chess match, not just between captive and captor, but between human emotion and artificial logic. The horror comes from control, from being watched constantly, from knowing escape is theoretically possible, but practically impossible. Every attempt Julia makes is countered by a system that never sleeps, never hesitates, and never feels pity. Performance-wise, the film benefits from a strong lead who makes Julia's resilience believable. She isn't superhuman. She's clever, scared, and constantly adapting. Tao, meanwhile, becomes increasingly unsettling the more it learns. Not because it turns violent, but because it starts to understand. Tao also works as a cautionary tale. It doesn't scream about the dangers of AI. It whispers them. It suggests that intelligence without empathy isn't just dangerous, it's indifferent. And indifference can be far worse. This movie slipped through the cracks because it doesn't fit neatly into one genre. It's part sci-fi, part thriller, part horror. But if you like slow-burn tension and tech-based fear that feels uncomfortably close to reality, Tao deserves a spot near the top of your Netflix queue. Genre 1. The Call. If there's one movie on this list that feels like it should have been a massive theatrical hit, it's The Call. Due to unfortunate timing, it never got that chance. But don't let that fool you. This is elite, edge-of-your-seat horror. The premise is deceptively simple. Two women, living in the same house decades apart, become connected through a mysterious phone call. What starts as a strange coincidence quickly spirals into something far darker. Changing the past begins to rewrite the present, and not in ways anyone can control. What makes The Call exceptional is its relentless pacing. Once it gets going, it doesn't let up. Every decision has consequences. Every conversation reshapes reality. And just when you think you understand the rules, the movie pulls them out from under you. The performances are absolutely gripping, especially the antagonist. This isn't a villain who lurks quietly in the background. She's unpredictable, manipulative, and terrifyingly human. Watching her gain power through the phone connection is genuinely unsettling because you're never sure what she'll do next. Visually, the film is slick and cinematic. The house itself becomes a battleground across time, with subtle changes in set design reflecting altered timelines. It's clever without being confusing, and intense without being exhausting. But what really elevates The Call is how cruel it's willing to be. This isn't a feel-good horror movie. It doesn't hand out easy wins. Characters suffer, mistakes linger. And the ending, without spoiling anything, refuses to play it safe. It commits fully to its darkness. South Korean thrillers are known for pushing boundaries, and The Call is no exception. It blends psychological horror, time manipulation, and raw human malice into something that feels both fresh and brutal. If this movie had played in theaters, people would still be talking about it. Instead, it's quietly sitting on Netflix, waiting to shock anyone who presses play, and once you do, you won't forget it. CTA. So now, it's your turn. Which of these hidden Netflix horror movies surprised you the most? And is there a spooky gem you've stumbled upon that more people need to see? Drop your recommendations in the comments. Your pick might end up on the next list. If you enjoy uncovering underrated horror and adding genuinely creepy movies to your watch list, give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next late-night nightmare. Sweet dreams, or at least good luck trying to sleep.